It's not a business for the faint at heart. It's not easy. And today, the acquisition of a customer is so much more expensive. In our heyday, we were probably about 18 million in revenue. Our big thing is we take B-level salespeople and make them.
All right. Hey, listener, welcome back. Today, I have a wonderful guest I'm really excited about. This is Nick Loise, and he owns and operates a wonderful sales enablement, sales management, sales training. But to say that, I think it would do him a disjustice and a disservice because, Nick, you do so much more than that. I want to get into your story, your backstory in just a bit, but Nick owns and operates Sales Performance Team, and I love our conversations. So, Nick, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you. What a great podcast voice you have, and thanks for getting this going again. I mean,
Yeah.
you and I were just joking. You're younger than me, but you've been around this business for a long time, and it's kind of fun to talk to people that have seen the evolution of it. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But I could talk to you forever. You just such an inquisitive mind and such a smart guy, and a
Thanks,
great
man.
implementer and operator and marketer. And the funniest thing about Daniel, I think you and I were talking, you're like, Nick, I just love this business. I just love the information, the coaching, the consulting business, and I want to be of service to people in the business. And I think that's your true north. One, you're a good person, right? You care about people, you care about the founders that you work with. So it's always fun to talk to you. So this is going to be great, a great day unpack
Yeah.
it. But I just want to say thank you for the work that you do. We were joking about, there's a lot of, let's call it people of not sound mind and character.
Shysters.
Yeah, yeah,
We can
yeah.
call them out on here.
Yeah, we'll call
Yahoos
them
and
out. We'll be fine. I don't want to get anybody in trouble on their podcast, but listen, you've got true north. You're a good person. You know the business. You know the business better than most. You've forgotten, stuff that people just haven't even learned yet, and it's not a business for the faint at heart. It's not easy, right? So you got to figure that out.
It's not. Well, thanks for saying that. It is a crazy journey. And I remember one of my mentors early on, he said, Daniel, in this business, be prepared to see people that have an overnight success in 12 months. And then by month 13, they're completely gone. Where
Yeah.
are they? No forwarding address.
Yeah.
And I've seen it. And I'm sure you've seen that
Oh
many
yeah.
times
I mean,
over.
I've been in this business far too long. 2012 is when I kind
Yeah.
of get into the info space, work for a large company, GKIC,
Mhm.
and Dan Kennedy, who, was a great mentor and a great educator and really one of the granddaddies of this business, if
Yeah.
you will, that's still doing great stuff. Kind of said, one is everybody's a overnight success, but they flame out, right? You don't know what their back end is. You don't, you have to have really an operations and a business mind. And today the acquisition of a customer is so much more expensive.
Mhm.
And the fulfillment of that for that service is just so much more expensive. So you have to run this as a business. And many times people run it as their personal piggy bank, right? And so they're
Yeah.
chasing their media spend, if you will, and it becomes problematic, right? Because that's a death spiral. And listen, we all do it as business owners, right? We all maybe overspend by
Yeah.
taking a swing for the fences, but you got to have the cash reserves and you have to have the ability. Like you said, 12-month success and then they're gone. And
Yeah.
it's interesting to see. And I think we're going to see a washout even
Mm.
more. And it'd be interesting for you and I to get on, in 6 months or a year
Yeah.
from now and just kind of talk a little bit about it. But let's talk about
Pencil
what
it
we
in.
know now.
Yeah, well, I'll pencil that in for sure.
Yeah,
And so, listener, when Nick talked about Dan Kennedy, if you're not familiar with Dan Kennedy, number one, you should be,
yeah,
because he's the guru's original mentor. And so, looking at the lineage, I'm not going to go beyond Dan Kennedy, but there's some before then. But direct response marketing, Dan Kennedy was the mentor of Russell Brunson. You're familiar with Russell, most likely, ClickFunnels. And then there's another big name nowadays, Alex Hormozi. And
sure, yeah, Alex, and I remember him from his gym days. He was a
yes.
member of ours.
So the lineage.
Yeah,
So as you can see, it all goes back to the family tree per se
yeah,
of where did this thing get started.
yeah,
But with that, Nick, what was your background in with Dan Kennedy and magnetic marketing and
sure.
GKIC? Tell them that.
Yeah, so I actually was a member first.
Okay.
I'm going to really date myself, Daniel. 1994, I was running a West Coast sales team in a traditional business. We were in
Yeah.
the hotel business.
Oh, okay.
I was running a large sales team, and I had all the West Coast, right? So we had properties in California, Seal Beach, California, Phoenix, Arizona, Las Cruces, New Mexico, and within that region. I took my sales team to um, the Success Tour, which was Zig
Okay.
Ziglar.
Yeah.
Back then,
Yeah.
it was President Bush. It was Jerry Colangelo, who owned the Phoenix Suns and the Diamondbacks, and a lot of great people. And at the end of it, there was a big guy with a really funny looking mustache passing out pink flyers to get people to stay. And that person was Dan Kennedy. And it was talking about marketing. So I said, well, sales marketing, I've been a student, I've been a fan, I'm an educator. I really loved the info education business, right? I listened to Earl Nightingale, kind of grew up
Yeah.
on that, grew up on Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy. If you were to go into my basement, you'd see all of those cassette tapes, which some of your listeners may not even know what those are. They're a little thing that you put in your car and you listen to them as you're driving around. Now everything is MP3. But Gunther Renker, and Nightingale Conant was in my backyard. So I did a lot of studying of that. And so we studied marketing, and I bought magnetic marketing. And I think, oh, wait, hold on. You're going to get a kick out of this.
Yeah.
This is the
Oh, nice.
1994. This is a binder for those that
Cool.
don't know or are listening to us on TV, and there's like all samples of ads in education. And I carried that with me to every business I've ever been in. So fast forward, got out of that business, was a traditional marketer, but really implemented the tools of direct response marketing. Still a massive fan and
Yeah.
student of Dan Kennedy. I had a marketing agency from 2006 to 2012. We just did direct response, both
Mm.
digitally and traditional direct response, did direct response websites, direct mail. At one time, we'd have about 350,000 postcards being mailed every month. Right. So we were kind of in that business. And we sold that because I had some venture capital or investment capital and some partners, and people wanted to get their money out. I got recruited to a GKIC, which is the
Mhm.
Glazer Kennedy Insider Circle, and be a student of Bill Glazer too, because I think sometimes he doesn't get enough credit. But Glazer Kennedy Insider Circle was owned by a private equity firm. Private equity firm was in Evanston. The company was like minutes away from my house. It was like karma. I was a student, loved it, was their VP of sales, then became the president, and
Yeah.
just loved every minute, and still work with members, right? Because it was a membership organization. In our heyday, we were probably about 18 million in revenue,
Mhm.
right? Probably about 6,000 members paying us various sums. And then we sold a lot of traditional product info products at that
Yeah.
time. We had probably about 50 SKUs, right? Almost too many
Wow.
info
Yeah.
products, right? But Dan was prolific, right? And Bill was prolific. And we did a lot of events that produced our stuff. And we had 4 to 5 major coaching programs at any time, anywhere from 8,000 to 12,000 to $50,000, right? So 50, obviously, it was to work with Dan. But it was just a lot of fun, a lot of really sharp marketers. I learned a lot, and still to this day, do and really try to be a good acolyte, if you will. Right, goes
Mhm.
back to my Catholic days, but try to be a good acolyte of having students learn from Dan and go. And I think Russell's doing a great job of carrying that forward. And Darcy, who I had the pleasure of working with, one of the smartest people in this business,
Mm.
is still there and a good steward of that. So
Yeah.
that fast forward to today, we were in it. I worked with a lot of people. We could get the marketing right? The work that you do, get the marketing right, but they all struggle with the sales teams and the sales
Yeah.
process and everything like that. And so what we did was we kind of created the formulation of sales performance team inside GKC, tested it, did a lot of work with our clients in that space. And then I had a really good exit. The team that I was working with allowed me to take the IP. They didn't
Yep.
want to be in the business. They wanted to be pure play in marketing. And so we spun off, right? And so
Nice.
it was a
Yeah.
great exit. I'm still working with a lot of the members.
Mhm.
And some of the first clients that we had when I spun off the business 5 years ago, going on 6, we still work with. So it's a pleasure.
Yeah. Man, well, thanks for that backstory. There's
Yeah.
a lot of things in there that I wasn't familiar with. So,
Yeah. I get a lot. It was a short answer, a long answer to a short question.
yeah, all good.
Yeah.
Well, I love hearing the story. And on my business card, it says chief storyteller because I think CEO for me is a little pompous.
Yeah.
right now anyway. But, listener, you heard Nick say 50 SKUs, and you've heard me talk about you need to focus on a core offer. A core offer can be scaled up to millions, truthfully, millions in info product sales. But when Nick said 50 SKUs, that means 50 different individual products that they were selling. Imagine that. Imagine you had 50 different items. Yeah.
It's too
So,
much, right? That we had we had a, sales floor, we had a concierge floor, we had a fulfillment team. But if you think about the business, and to go on your point, because you're spot on with what you just said, our core offering was magnetic marketing,
hmm,
right? The derivatives of that was magnetic marketing, then the ultimate sales machine, which was the next step, then the ultimate information marketing machine, which was for the information marketers, right? But the core is still magnetic marketing. The coaching was magnetic marketing, right? Then we did some let's call it personal development coaching for entrepreneurs, because we all need to work on our
yeah.
head a little bit in this
Yes.
business. And so that was peak performers. And it's so everything, though, the core, if you went back to it, was the Bible, if you will. I'm not using that in a derogatory term, but the core offering was magnetic marketing. And that
Hmm.
was, you know, easily 40% of our sales of SKUs.
Yeah. Okay.
So
That makes sense. Well, I want to ask a little more open ended, but
please.
larger question. Why info products? Why are people so drawn to this crazy, wonderful industry?
Well, I think
Your opinion.
Yeah, well, I think it's been I think you said it. Listen, it's been around forever, right? If you go back to Napoleon Hill,
Yeah.
he really was an information marketer, right? The Think and Grow Rich is nothing more than a long sales letter, long form sales letter in a book, right? And if you go back and you study his business, which you should do this if you're in this business, is go back and study all the older business. If you go back and study, I think it's Robert Collier, right, which has got a
Mm,
great book for copywriters, right? He's a great copywriter. Master Keys to Success was one of his main products, and it was an info product. So since the industrial revolution, so in the 1900s, we've been selling information, right?
yeah.
Dale Carnegie, everybody was producing information and selling it. So we're drawn to information because one is we know that there's an easier way out there, or somebody's got more information, so we want to seek this out. And so those that are aggressively in their education, and self-education, I think, is much better. I'm a proponent of college, right? My kids all went to college. I went to college. I went to
Yeah.
graduate school. I taught at the graduate school level. So
Mm,
I'm not bashing that, but I also think you have to supplement that. You have to do
yeah.
this. And if you think about, let's fast forward today, even in the non-traditional, marketing education that you and I are in, or info product, but masterclass, right, which has
Mhm.
got huge funding by venture capitalists, is really nothing more than information marketing, right?
Yeah.
Really interviewing really good people about a core topic that they are involved in, right? And so I think we are searching that out, right? Birds of a feather flock together. We
Mhm.
want people that like what we like. And so if you think about business events, we as entrepreneurs want to be around other entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
right? Because we want to learn from them, but we also want to kind of soak up that atmosphere and that creation of environment or community. Because really what we're looking for, I think you're spot on. I think it's stories and
Yeah.
community. I think
Yeah.
it's those two things, and you have to meld them together. And nothing does that better than the information marketing business if done
Mm.
right.
I love your take on it. I see it as a part of the American dream. I'm not saying
Yes.
that info products are only sold in America, but when I think about information products, or hey, I'm going to sell this course or sell this mastermind or this event that you come to, then that just goes back to the desire for, hey, I'm going to get better so that I can advance my status, my rank in the world, quote unquote, the American dream. I can make it. Anybody can make it in this country.
I think, to piggyback on that, and I think
Yeah.
you're spot on with that. I also think if I look back at my days at GKIC, and I bet you if other people kind of parse out their information marketing business, over 25% of our business came from international students,
Mm, yeah.
right? They attended our events, and when they attended our events, they were the best students.
Hmm.
First off, they were dressed impeccably, right? If you go to American events, people are in flip flops and and t-shirts and hats on backwards. The Europeans, the Russians, Ukrainians, wherever they came from, the Japanese, they all came
Yeah.
and they sat in the front row. They were there. They got there early.
Hmm.
They asked questions. They were respectful. They went up and talked to the speakers.
Yeah.
One event we had 25 people from Haiti.
Oh, wow.
Cool as hell to have that,
Yeah.
right? We had, we would bring translators. We had a large Japanese distributor
Okay.
who, distributed our stuff in Japan. His business was based on all of the information marketing business. Great
Hmm.
business model. He brought like 15 people, so we had translators, right? And then when I would travel for GKIC, I
Mhm.
went to Milan and saw a phenomenal information marketer, Frank Miranda's. You should look him up. Your
Hmm.
team
Okay.
should. He does a huge event. It was Hollywood production, and he was a great information marketer. So it does transcend the American dream, right? It
Yeah.
does transcend American education. And I think there's a lot of people that are looking at what's going on in our information marketing businesses and bringing it back to their core countries. But
Hmm.
the really astute people will do exactly what you said. They'll go back and say, who was the educator of my educator? Who was the guru of my guru?
Yeah.
Who is the core person of this? Let me go study from them
Yeah.
and learn from them, because there are things that will get lost in translation, right?
Hmm.
There are things that will be, listen, the Bible is the oldest book in the world, right? But there's so many different versions of it. You want to go back to the core messaging of it. And so that's where people do what they do. And I think that's the smart thing to do.
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with you. So, listener, think about who you're already listening to now and see if they had a mentor that you can gain access to, whether through written text, their podcast, or even access to them already. That was one of the things early on that set me on a right path. I talk about this a lot too when people say, Daniel, how did you learn this? I had some mentors early on that helped me cut through the noise and go to Dan Kennedy and Jay Abraham rather
Yeah,
than listening to the so-called gurus of the day.
correct.
And I I'm so thankful for that. I'm so thankful that I found people like Jay Abraham, Chet Holmes, Dan Kennedy early on, rather than me 10 years now into it, learning from them 10 years later.
Yeah, and it's kind
Um,
of interesting. Two of the three are still around, right? And Amanda's doing great stuff with her dad's business. Chet Holmes, Amanda Holmes is his daughter, and so it's kind of fun, right? These businesses do have legs, if you
yeah,
will, right? Brian Tracy, who's been around forever, is still out there, and it's kind of neat to see.
it is. I get to talk monthly with another mentor of mine, Jim Cathcart.
Oh,
And
sure.
yeah, and Jim, I actually got reconnected to him because of a family friend of ours, Don Hudson.
Okay.
Don and Jim, they traveled around with Zig early on, and so I get to hear stories of the success tour and the summit and all that fun stuff. But anyway, well, man, we could talk forever about the origin of info product businesses. I'd love to hear your take on someone has some expertise, some experience. I'm not saying it's an 18-year-old guy out there, but what do you see as the right path for someone to start a business in this field? Maybe selling a course or a coaching program. I'm of the opinion that you should start with a coaching program, something a little more intimate to build up testimonials first. Then you can package up your course from it, kill a couple birds with one stone. That's my opinion on it. I'd love to hear your take on the right path.
So I think first off is you find a good mentor like Daniel Pope and the folks at Beano, right? And I'm being serious, because I think there's a lot of charlatans in this business that are really quick to spend other people's money, but you know the business, right? So find somebody that knows the business and goes deep on the business. So that's the first thing, right? Even if it's just buy a couple hours of their time, right? And say, here's what I'm thinking of doing, and get good advice from them. That's the first thing. Second thing is, you have to tell a story. You have to be for somebody and against something, right? So I think you're spot on with that. So what is your core story? not that I just want to be better at selling, right? Our big thing is we take B level salespeople and make them A. We take C level salespeople and make them B, right? We also put an operating system, a sales operating system in your business, right? Because you business owner cannot afford a VP of sales from a Fortune 1000 company or
Mm-hmm.
100 company. You just can't afford it, but you could afford a fraction of it with us and our team, and
Yeah.
that will make your business better. So that's our core story. So who we're against and who we're for. So the first thing you need to do is know who you're for and who you're against. Second thing you need to do is take it through the prism of how do I create a community, right? What is my community going to be? Even if it's just people that buy my stuff or part of my group, what is my community and how do I add stickiness to them, right? And I don't mean just a school community, though I think that's great, but I really think you have to think about that 24/7. Then you have to become a content producer. Even if the content is just to produce people and put them into your coaching program, you've got to be a beast on nowadays. I would say it's YouTube, right? YouTube is the new book, right? I think you should write a book, but go to YouTube. I think they're doing great things on Reddit, right? So if I was a new person, I'd be focusing on Reddit. You probably have to spend some time at figuring out how to communicate and build your community on Facebook, right? And Instagram. I think those are important. I think TikTok, especially if you want an international space. And if you're in the B2B space or maybe more traditional businesses, you're going to look at LinkedIn, right? So those are my media sources that I'm going to be in. They are not a business. Now, this is where I think people get them. They think they are in the internet business or the YouTube business or the Facebook business. Those are just media sources, right? So it goes back to what's my core messaging? What's my core selling,
Yeah.
right? How do I, a copywriter, I'm just going to create a long form sales letter on VSL or YouTube. So think about it from that perspective. I like what you said, and I think you're spot on in today's day and age of saying, let me get a group of people together and let me help them and let me share with them. And maybe it's at a discounted rate. So I'm getting some testimonials. I think that's
Yeah.
very, very important. And I think you have to go out there and look to see what's your differentiation in the marketplace. How are you different? If you're just, go ahead. Did you want to jump
No,
into
no,
something?
I want to hit on that so
Okay.
heavy.
So
Yes.
you can't just be a me too, right? Because there's so many me too's and it's just that I look better, or I've rented the Ferrari instead of the Bentley, or I went to an Airbnb and bought it for a half a day and did a lot of video, but you never see any furniture or you never get past the front door or you go into the garage. We won't say who does that, but TL is his initials, right? So, but there's a lot of where I'm really telling stories and jokes, but there's a lot of charlatans out there. And so understand that. And charlatans have been in this business probably longer than they've been in politics, right? And so we just have to understand that and kind of do your filter. But that's your core business, right? Core business community. What's my media source? What's my story? Who am I for? Who am I against? How do I differentiate myself in the marketplace? How do I communicate that over and over and over and over again? And I think one of the things that people don't do enough of is they don't tell their core story that you are big on over and over and over again because they get bored with it. So go ahead. That's a
It's
lot.
funny.
We
It's
unpacked. Go
funny
ahead
you
and
say
unpack it.
that because and listener, I want you to know that what Nick just said there, all of that, if you really marinate on that for a weekend and then plug that into your AI flavor of the
Sure.
day,
Yeah.
that's going to save you 6 to 7 figures of mentorship. Just it's going to also compress 5+ years of your time. I'm serious. So rewind the episode, take notes on what Nick said, each individual piece, and run with that, because it comes down to your story, it comes down to your offer, and then it comes down to a great traffic source. And I say singular because there's a time and a place to get plural with it,
Correct.
and it's not when you're starting up.
Yeah.
So you're spot on with the differentiation. And it's funny. I actually coach a group of entrepreneur women
Oh,
individually.
wonderful. I love
I
that.
do. It's a
Yeah.
former client
Excellent.
of mine, and I had some extra time on Thursdays and
Yeah.
Wednesdays and Thursdays, and I coach these women. These are startups, and it's so fun getting back into the weeds of what does it mean to differentiate? What does it
Yeah.
mean to what's a coaching program even? But they're always looking at someone else, and it always comes up in the conversation of, Daniel, they're doing it this way. Should I should I do it that same way? It's like, well, what's your flavor of ice cream? Who are you? Because I will never eat Rocky Road, but I'll always eat pralines and cream. Just like I won't ever buy from XYZ, but I'll always buy from ABC. And it that's the argument I use when people say, I just don't know if I don't know if anybody's going to buy my program. I'm like, well, maybe they won't, but how about we test it and let's
Yeah.
not be scared of competition. The
So I think
worst,
testing is key. I
yeah,
think differentiation is key. And, we used to joke about this. Dan used to say this, and I use this as an example to prove your point. We had X amount of people that coached lawyers,
mm,
right? And they would come and they were friendly competitors, if you will, right?
yeah,
And some were still practicing, some never practiced, and some practiced but now did this. So there was 4 of them. Dan said, I can line all 4 of them up and I could put 100 people in the room and 25 will go to one, 25 will go to another, 25 will go to another, 25 will go to another. Because people will gravitate towards your personality versus my personality, to your story versus my story. The
yeah,
fact that you like dogs and I like dogs, or
yeah,
you like cats and I like cats. And so I think all of that, listen, it's easier to scale a personality business than it is just a pure business. And so I think one of the things you're saying is differentiate yourself, but use everything in the toolbox.
mm-hmm,
That is, use everything in your personality and who you are. And that becomes some of your differentiation. And people will gravitate or not. Right? You may be, a repulsive SOB. You're going to find other repulsive SOBs, and you're probably not
yes.
going to want to service them because they're going to be draining as that. But that's what you're going to find. And I think you have to realize that in this business is we all have FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, and we all want to replicate other people. But you have to also realize that it's their chapter 20 and you're on chapter 1, right? So for these women that you're working with, they are just starting out. So they cannot compare somebody's chapter 20 to their prelude even, right? To their beginning stages. And you have to realize every business goes through that life cycle. And the key is to have that core foundation, that good story, that good differentiation, the mastering of one media source, one really good offer that you have down to a science that delivers phenomenal results for people, and you still build on it. And I think we want to make it too difficult because there's a lot of people out there that will, I'm sure your inbox is like mine. I've got 52 emails just from this weekend of people that could get me, the first, it can improve my website, okay.
Yes.
Of course, sure, of course, but I can't, I can't change it every minute. Could get me 82 appointments, and they never give me any appointments. Could get, so it go a GHL expert. It's okay.
Hey, I'm even getting emails now from people that can come clean my office space.
Well, that's
They're enterprise grade office space. I'm thinking, well, I work out of my apartment.
yeah,
I love working out.
yeah.
You gonna come clean?
So it's funny, but it's not, right. And we're
Yeah,
we're we're
yeah,
we're telling stories to prove a point. One is, I applaud them for attempting to go after a different business line,
yeah.
but the people that you work with really need to realize that. And I think your sound advice is great.
Hmm. Well, how do you know when an offer's not going to work?
Well,
How do
you
you
test it.
know?
You test it.
So after you test it, at what point do you give up? And I know that sounds a bit extreme, but I'm thinking about the listener here who they might be testing out a new offer, or they might be testing a variation of let's say a low ticket downsell.
Yeah. So I think it's all about your back end, right? And the business is based on the back end.
Yeah,
So if my front end offers acquisition is break even, then I think I'm doing okay, right? If I'm at break even, or maybe for every $2 I spend in, for every $1 spent in media, I get $2 back. I'm doing pretty good,
yeah,
right? But if I'm 1-to-1, I'm doing okay too, because now I got to work with somebody like you and have a back end offer, because
yeah.
that's where the money is, right?
Hmm.
It used to be that you had to have it. My guess is these numbers are off a little bit. I haven't looked at it recently, but you had to have about a $2,000, $2,500, or $3,000 offer to make your front end acquisition, especially on SEO and PPC and Facebook, profitable, right? So you had to have something in that range
Yeah.
to make it work. But there are people trying to do it on the book offer, right? Which is the $7 book offer, but they've got a powerful back end, right? So you have to have that powerful back end to get
Yeah.
that market basket to be, X, whatever X
Yeah.
is. This
Yeah.
business is nothing more than psychology and math, right? So what can I
Yes.
afford to spend? What's the messaging? What's the story? What's the differentiation? That's the psychology. What can I afford to spend? What's my conversion rate? What am I ready? What can I spend for a lead? What can I spend for a sales call? What can I spend for a sale? And then it's, can I afford more? Am I willing to take the risk? There's no business without risk, right?
Yeah.
It's just, it's arbitrage, right? I got $1. Can I spend 20, can I get $20 back, or do I lose my $2? Right. So now I went negative. I can't go negative if I don't have a good back end.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know we just dumped a lot, and that's pretty advanced stuff, but I think they need to kind of talk to you and
Yeah.
figure out what's their front end acquisition model, what's their back end acquisition model, what's their cross sells and buy sells. Maybe they get the lead and they can't convert the lead and they sell the leads to somebody else, right?
Mm.
So that's a host parasite, right? So then they do a JV with somebody that's kind of got a like offer but different, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot to do in this business, and you're a student of Jay Abraham. I think nobody unpacks it better than him.
Yeah.
Right. I think it, like, 5 minutes of his teaching is like an MBA in this business.
Yes.
Right. And you gotta, and he's more strategic where Dan is more tactical, but they all do the same thing. And listen, I was just listening to a podcast I got my son. My son is in his 20s and he's in the business and he's doing a great job in his core business, but he's looking, he's tried a Amazon drop ship and he was trying things, right? So which is what you want to teach as a parent.
Yeah.
I just sent him one, and it's, about a guy that does a lot of little businesses. He's got 8 businesses. They spin him off $8,000 in cash flow every month, right? That's not a bad business, right?
Yeah.
And so, but he's trying different things. And I think in business, you have to try different things.
Oh man, this is something, okay. So to back up a little bit, I really enjoy you talking about the advanced things and more of the nitty gritty, what most people don't talk about, because this is exactly how I want to position this podcast. The things that most info product industry podcasts don't talk about. Like,
Yeah.
I want to talk about CAC, LTV, AOV, like the numbers. I want to get into scaling mechanisms and tactics, because when I listen to podcasts in our industry, most of the time it's, hey, Nick, tell me about your offer.
Yeah.
How many people on your team? All right. You're doing great. Everyone's doing great. We're all doing great. Great. So
Usually it's, hey, bro. But yeah, I agree. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that this is a business. And
Yes.
I think it starts kind of how we started out talking about this. You have to treat it like a business, right? So be a student of the business, understand the business, understand the mechanisms, right? Listen, the guys and gals that are doing really well in their business, and you know this as well as I do, they're not afraid to talk at the numbers, right?
Oh.
This is my acquisition. And they go to these events and they go to these coachings and they share, and they're all trying to figure it out together.
Yeah.
And there's and I think you as a business person, even if like you help people with trauma in their lives, you're still a business person, right?
Yeah.
Or you help people find their suitable mate, you're still a business person, right? This is still a business. And you have to treat it that way of, what's my acquisition model, right? How am I going to get awareness? What's my acquisition model? And keep going down and down and down and down and down. And if you don't like doing that, then find, somebody like Daniel Pope and his team to help you, or at least give you guidance, because this is it's a very fulfilling business, but it's also a very draining business, right? And you got to treat it as a business. So,
and even in a span of 30 days, that seesaw can tip to one side or the other.
Yeah.
We've both seen it. But I think about what you just said. That's so important, because most people lose track of the fact that it is a business. And I've realized one of my key differentiators over time is that I treat your business like an actual business, whether you are treating it like a business in the first place or not. We are going to formalize, legitimize, and scale this thing together. But with that being said, I love what you said about testing your son's testing, that gentleman's testing 8
Yeah.
different businesses, because I haven't talked about this publicly before, but I remember my very first business after I quit my IT job. I was working full-time IT during college, essentially. I was doing online classes, and I quit and I started up. It was it's called Web Estate Investments.
Okay.
and
All right.
and what we did was we spun up these online stores that drop ship all sorts of products. Did we make a single dime in profit? No, but it was
But did you
still,
learn?
oh man, oh yes.
Yeah.
And what I learned was we need a quote unquote funnel.
Yeah.
What's a funnel? And then I dove from funnels into how do we fill the funnel? Oh, traffic. Where do we get traffic? Do we conjure it up with a wand? No, we've got to drive it from somewhere. Facebook ads. And then wait, my ads don't convert. Copywriting. And so the point I'm trying to make is skill stacking. And I'm going to tie this back to what we talked about the business owner in a second, but skill stacking in the fact that you're already experienced, you have an expertise in one particular area. Let's say it's getting people through trauma. Let's just
Mhm.
use that example again. Well, how do you know how to do your books? How do you know what your profit and loss needs to say or is actually telling you? Well, you need to learn, first of all, how to look at your bank account and say,
Yeah.
yes, I have money, or oh no, I spent too much money. And then from there, watch a YouTube video. And I know this is a bit of a simple, trite example, but you've got to treat this like a legitimate thing. And it's not a case of spin up a course, put it out there, and people are going to buy. That's not the reality nowadays. You've got to surround yourself by mentors, podcasts, people, vendors, colleagues, experts who can actually help you. And it's I've got a little bit of a bone to pick with the whole visionary thing, Nick. Um, Meaning, I think people use the term visionary and they hear the term visionary, they use it as a crutch. They use
Yeah.
it as a crutch to see no evil, hear no evil. I'm just a visionary. Hey, Daniel Pope here. Real quick, I want to give you a huge thanks for listening. If you're enjoying it, I'd love it if you share with others. That's how I get the word out, by you sharing it with somebody that could really benefit from this. Now, I started this podcast to stand out above the noise, to give real growth tactics in a crazy world when others may give some misinformation or not cover everything you need to know. That's not my MO. My MO is being able to give back, being able to help others see what they actually need to do in order to grow. And that's why personally, my company, Be Known, we don't offer any courses or coaching programs. We're a done for you service provider because we know in this world, sometimes people just need a helping hand, a connected team, and an expert to be there every step of the way. So again, I really appreciate you listening and talk to you soon. So, Nick, where we last left off, not to be too pessimistic with this, but we were talking about why are there a lot of people that like to play pretend in our industry. And you've seen a lot, I've seen a lot, and I'm sure you've seen every type of business model out there under the sun in the information product and even coaching industry. But what is it with people that they think they can spin up this $997,000 course and sell it off of a webinar like it's 2016 and think they can do so profitably and not care about anything on the back end or the experience? I'm curious your take on it before I give you mine.
Yeah. Well, first off, that's a great question. And I think some of it we're to blame, right? Marketers are to blame, right?
Fair
We
enough.
sell people that it's easy, the easy button. You could do this. All you need is that. Second is that there's a lot of people that, you know, creating content is easy. It's cheap, right? You just need a
Yeah.
really good mic like you and I have. You need a really good camera, and you could just start spouting off stuff. And so I think it's a twofold. One is the best information marketers that I know of. One is our true students of this industry, right? Have kind of followed it or found somebody or did some research to kind of understand what it is. And this is a phenomenal industry and it's been around forever. The second thing, the ones that are really, really good are that play the long game, right? So they're not in and out of for a buck. Third is that they were really good at what they were teaching. So there's a lot of people out there teaching stuff that they've never done, or maybe they did 10 years ago, or even in this day and age, they did it 2 years ago and it's a different world, or COVID, is a different world.
Yeah.
And so they're not up to date and they're not selling what really works today. They're just good marketers. They're good at creating Facebook audiences. They're great at creating TikTok audiences, Meta, and Instagram, and they're good at kind of manipulating the logarithm. And so I think it's yes, yes, and yes. I think we are to blame because we're really good marketers or we're really good at teaching people. We're also taught people that this is, if you have something to share and you want to teach, that you should get in this business. And so I think, I've seen the enemy. The enemy is us, like kind of pogo, if you will, right? And I think also there's a lot of people out there that are looking for the fast buck, right? There's also, I think, this thing that I am judging people's chapter 25 when I'm on chapter 1, and I think I should be at their 25, right?
Yeah.
And so, as we sit here 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I was on vacation, I missed it, but Alex Hormozi did a huge launch, right?
Yeah.
Like him, don't like him. There's some, you're a fan of him, right? So we'll leave it at that. Or you studied him. I think everybody should.
We share the same birthday. His launch is on my birthday.
Yeah. And I also think that he's a great student of this business, right? Yeah. He's a great student of this. But now you're going to see a lot of people rushing to launch something similar without knowing his back end, without knowing his objectives, his strategic objectives, without knowing that I think I heard he spent over $4 million in media buy, right? And so there's a lot of things that you just don't understand because you haven't, you don't have the back end of his business. You don't understand what it is. You don't know what his strategic objectives are. Right. There's other businesses too, like you see Grant Cardone, who's I think done a phenomenal job with launching a number of different businesses. Like him, don't like him. We're not going to talk about that, but I think he's done a great job. I think he's brought events to a next level, right? Business events to a next level. But he had a back end, right? He was hunting for the large whales that can invest $250,000 or $1 million into his investment fund for real estate. So you got to know their back ends, and I think you have to kind of spend some time evaluating and not just funnel shop. We all funnel shop, right? I'm pointing a finger. I got 4 going back at me. I do the same thing, but we just funnel shop the front end. We don't funnel shop the back end and just understand what's going on and how many different times are they trying to sell this lead A, then B, then C, then 1, then 2, then 5. Then at a certain point, they do a strategic alliance with or JV or host parasite, whatever you want to call it, with somebody and send them all their non-buying leads because they try to reactivate, a offer with somebody's different offer, but they, so there's a lot of different ways to monetize this business. I guess I'm getting into and study the greats that we just, we kind of mentioned some, they're kind of newer. Certainly study Dan, study, Gunther Renker, study, the guys that were, go back as far as Napoleon Hill. We talked a little bit about him, and he had a back end and a front end, and he was selling courses and he was selling online schools. And, there's all these different people that have been in this business forever. And, do yourself the benefit of knowing the history of the business.
Yeah. Well, I loved the direction you took that. And I was hoping you'd go into the back end or, there's 3 core numbers that we both and any smart marketer would focus on, and that's cost per acquisition, average order value, or how much they spend in their shopping cart at the
shopping cart or market basket, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
And then there's one that many people don't think about, and it's lifetime value or gross profit over X amount of time per customer. Anyway, that's a fancy term for it. But when I think about the people that just like to play, or that think that they can spin up a course nowadays and they'll spin up a profitable business from it, they're neglecting their back end. And I don't know about you, but the stats that I've seen, and in the year of our Lord 2025, it's September. I can't even believe it. This year has flown by. But Nick, what I've seen is that cost per acquisition has risen, and it's risen a lot. And so gone are the days where I can just pop out a course for a client and say, all right, we're going to get at least a 3x on this. You're going to spend $333 to make $1,000 sale. And Nick, it's funny. I want to segue this into, I was working with a client just a little bit ago, and we talked about the most successful programs right now that I see all include elements of experience, experiential, high touch, and even some done for you services on the back end. And I don't know what you're seeing out there, but from my view, some of the most successful, highest return on ad spend programs over X amount of time includes things such as, hey, when you buy this, you're going to get the course, obviously, but the course could be free. Hey, here's your free bonus. Just like Hormozi did in his launch, the course videos are free. What you're really buying is you're buying the community, you're buying the accountability, you're buying the done for you service, such as I'll create all the contracts, or I'll create the funnel for you, or I'll create the LinkedIn messenger for you. But anyway, I want to pass it back to you and ask, what are you seeing successful? Anything you want to expand upon there?
Well, I think you're spot on, right? And I think it goes back to what we've talked about. The stuff that you bring to your clients and you bring to the industry is know your numbers, right? And you're the master at just diving deep on it. And sometimes founders don't want to get into that because it's boring and it's, they want to
Scary.
they want to teach. Well, that is scary, right? And so, but every high performing business person that I know, whether they're in this business or they're in butcher, baker, candlestick maker, traditional business or service business, or whatever it is, know their numbers, right? And they know their numbers down to the T, right? And they're grinding in it. And I think you have to know that. So it's interesting that you're talking about, I think, let's use pre-COVID, post-COVID, right?
Yep.
I think let's use that. So pre-COVID, right as you're kind of running up to that, we did a lot. I had a clients doing a lot of events. What you said was 100% correct. You had to have a high touch, high end, nicely done event, right? With a lot of value adds, all that good stuff. You had to have a couple different offers. You probably had to have a done for you, which is what you said, wrapped in there, because nobody really wanted to do the business. They just wanted to buy the results, right? That's what they're buying. They're buying the results. But so you have to put the margin, you have to really mark it up to done for you so that you have the margin in it. COVID happened. We weren't allowed to go to connect with people. We still did online events, but they were online, right? So you still had a cost of acquisition. You had to send people some stuff, but a lot of newbies got into that, and they were okay with doing it, right? They were okay with kind of fiddling with it and doing the work. One is they didn't have maybe the cash in the past, right? Or they didn't have the knowledge or wherewithal that there was any other solution, so that you kind of reset and went back to the traditional info businesses that you and I grew up on, right? And then now you're on the second wave again, right? So the pendulum swings and swings back, and so now you're into the events. There has to be some level of events, high touch. We want to be around people again. We're getting back on planes. We're at TSA in Chicago, announced last week. This weekend that we're recording was one of the busiest times ever, right? So we're back to traveling. We want to be around people, and there has to be kind of a done for you component. Some of it is because we missed the beginning stages of what we have to teach business owners or people that want to get into this business. And the core fundamentals of that is, how do I write good copy? How do I tell a compelling story like you and your firm is about? How do I write good copy, tell a compelling story? They want to skip that. So somebody's got to do that for them, because if not, you're just a sea of sameness. We haven't taught them what I teach them, right, which is how to sell something, how to
Yeah.
get somebody on the phone and convert that into a really good discovery call and convert that in, transition them into a client, right? And so they have to now go out and buy that service, that done for you service, because they don't have those skills or don't want to go out and acquire those skills or learn those skills, right? These skills are all learned, right?
Yeah.
Copywriting is learned, right? You just find really good ads, write, the old days, Dan taught us, right? Write them out 3 times to 10 times, right? Study them. There's a rhythm of a good ad.
Yeah.
There's a rhythm of a good sales call. There's a process, right? Problem, agitate, solve. Same thing. So you have to kind of be a student of the business, but go back to be a student of the fundamentals. I think one of the key metrics that everybody throws around that I think is a ghost metric, and I don't think it does anybody any good, is return on advertising spend, right?
Mm.
ROAS. Well, that doesn't tell me what your back end of your business is. That doesn't tell me what your profit is, right? I want to know what your net income is. I want to know what your
Yeah.
profit is. I want to know, this could be a really, really profitable business, or it could be a drain. As you said, acquisition is up, right?
Yeah.
In all businesses, we are in 50% of my businesses in, information marketing, coaching, consulting, events, sponsorships, all that. Other 50% is what's called traditional businesses, logistic companies. So we see it on all ends.
Yeah.
And, spend is up, right? To acquire a customer is more and more expensive. Zuckerberg's the only person making any money. The guys that own China's making it for TikTok, right? LinkedIn and Microsoft is making the money. So the media companies are making the money unless the savvy entrepreneur is saying, let me acquire this person. Let me have compelling conversations to move them to my email list. Now I own the media, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm putting them in a school group, but that's still going to be expensive, right? To kind of service that school group. I don't really like that because now you're bringing your community into Costco, right? So they could go find 50 other people that do what you do, right? All entrepreneurs
Yeah.
are ADD, right? So there's a problem with that,
Yeah.
right? And so you got to have to figure out how do I, you know, Warren Buffett looks for a business that has a moat around the customer.
Mm-hmm.
How do you create a moat around your customer, right? How do you create a gate around your customer? Dan taught the same thing, right? So these are all really, really, really smart business people teaching you these type of things.
Yeah.
Learn from all these different types of businesses and bring them to your business.
Well,
How's that for a long answer to a short question?
no. Excellent. I love hearing that. My mind jumps immediately to, well, if CAC, customer acquisition cost, is going up, then how do we go out there and do our best to find sources of more affordable traffic at the same or higher quality? My mind takes a page out of Jay Abraham's books and teachings and says, okay, there are people that already have the
Yeah,
attention of our ideal customer. They may not be buying from them, or they may not have bought from them recently, or they may offer something complementary to what we do. So how can we take advantage of that ethically and methodically, uh, so that we can acquire customers without using paid ads? Because, listener, for reference, if you're going out there and putting together a webinar and it costs you, let's say, $10 per registrant using Facebook ads, meta ads, then that's you spending money to acquire a registrant before you even sell them, before they even buy from you. But what I'm getting at is, okay, let's say you have a webinar around cooking. I love to cook. Let's just say cooking.
sure.
So, cooking Italian food. How do you monetize that? It doesn't matter for this example, but cooking Italian food. Well, you could go out there and start to look at who already has the attention of people who love Italian food. Well, in a perfect world, you could go out there and get sponsored by Stanley Tucci's Taste of Italy. But in a more realistic way, you could go out there and look at other YouTube channels that are, hey, wow, that's a really cool couple that lives in Italy from the United States, from the Americas. But anyway, Nick, what are your thoughts on strategic partnerships? Are your clients using them right now? Are they using them to the fullest?
We try to
JVs?
get them to use them. We love strategic partnerships. I think you're spot on with that, especially with the cost of acquisition going up. The other thing we're trying to get our clients to do, which scares a lot of people, is, and you touched on this a little bit, is raise your prices.
Oh
Increase the
yeah.
experience, but raise the prices,
Yeah.
right? And it can't just be, well, I'm just going to give them more stuff. I'm going to give them more content. Nobody's consuming the content you're providing them anyway, so just giving them more isn't going to do it. So you got to think of different ways to do that, or even maybe you're including JV partners, right? And
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
there's different ways to kind of be creative about this, but you have to raise your prices. The other thing that I think you have to do is we be really, really, really great at JV or host parasite, whatever you want to call it. I don't really like that much, but Jay Abraham kind of coined that phrase. Who has my customer? How can I, and is it worth it? Do I have a strong enough back end that I could give almost all of my front end up? So that way it's really great for the strategic partner. So he's like, oh my God, this is excellent, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
getting all this revenue. And I now have the ability to monetize them on the back end. Do I
Hmm.
have a sales team that can get on the phone? Do I have great offers? Do I have compelling copy? Do I tell a great story that I can convert them? I think that's where people miss, right? And or they don't create a really, really, really good offer to set it up, right? Because you're going to a list of somebody that's probably trained these people to buy. So they're really good, really good buyers.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're going with a really good offer so you set it up for success.
Hmm.
Um, it's the old days, right? And they got themselves in trouble, but there was a bunch of guys, they called themselves the cartel, right? And they
Yeah.
just, in essence, traded offers and sold it to the list, right? We don't have to go back to that. You could do some research, you could find it, who we're talking about. But a lot of them cleaned up their act and aren't in that anymore. But this business was really built on that, right?
Yeah.
The old days we would go out and buy lists, right? So we would go out and get the MDS lists, right? So you'd go out and there was these big red books that you had, and you'd buy lists, and were they buyer lists, were they compiled lists, right? And then you'd say, okay, this could be a good audience for me, so I'm going to put my offer to a small amount of this list to see if the offer resonates. Do I get my money back? Can
Yep.
I turn my money? And do I have a strong enough back end so I'm okay with just breaking even or maybe going a little bit negative on my acquisition on the front end because I know I got a solid back end. So I think you need to, it goes back to being a student of the business,
Yeah.
studying other businesses,
Yeah.
figuring things out, or you're going to have to pay. You're going to have to pay to acquire, and you have to be comfortable with paying to acquire, and you have
Yeah.
to be okay with it. And then what happens is you get mad at a guy like Daniel who's doing everything he can, but your cost of acquisition is going up. It's not his problem. It's just the nature of the beast of how much media is costing and the logarithm and attention, right?
Hmm.
And you're not you don't have a compelling offer, or you're going the race to the bottom that I hate when people do it is we're just going after really bad leads, right? Because we're okay because they're $3 a lead or $2 a
Hmm.
lead. Well, they're
Yeah.
not a good buyer, right? I don't care about a lead. I want a buyer.
Man, such a powerful concept to keep in mind. Man, there's gold in in this entire session. But think about your cost to acquire a customer. And if you're sitting there saying, "Well, I don't run paid ads." Okay. Well, what does it cost maybe in time?
Sure.
So if you're not running any sort of paid acquisition, if you're not paying to play, what does it cost in your time? Are you posting on social? Where are you getting your customers from? That's probably a more important thing. Where are they coming in from? Take stock, take an audit of that, and then figure out, okay, each customer on average pays me $1,000, and it costs me $100 to fulfill. That means you have $900 left over to. I'm going to use this term lightly, but to play with,
Sure.
and you can go out there and offer somebody 450 of that 900 and say, hey, I'm willing to give you 50% of my gross profit to send me buyers. Wow. But you got to think about it. Would it be more cost effective to start spending on Facebook ads or YouTube ads or Quora ads or Reddit ads, right? And anyway, Nick, I was about to open a can of worms, but you know what? I think we save it for the next time because I think we should land this plane. We're about to go down some rabbit holes, but
Rabbit holes are
anyway,
fun, and because I think if people, I'm all right with landing the plane, but I do think you hit on something strong where I don't think people look at enough is alternative media sources that most people aren't thinking about.
that's
Right?
that's the Popeye spinach I was
Yeah,
about to open.
yeah, and I think let's tease them a little bit that
Yeah,
you need to be thinking about this.
yeah, yes, you
Yes,
do.
I know Facebook has got everybody, right? Everybody's grandmother is on Facebook and everybody's father is on Facebook and that, and I know that Instagram has got a lot of people. And I know that LinkedIn has got a lot of professionals, right? So I'm bullish on LinkedIn. I'm not as bullish on Facebook nowadays
Mm,
and Instagram. I
yeah,
am bullish on Reddit that you
yeah,
hit on, and Quora. I am bullish on them because I think those are people searching, right? It used to be
yeah,
like an Amazon. They're buying, they're looking for a solution. YouTube, they're learning, they're learners, right? It used to be a book buyer in this business was a great lead.
mm,
Still
yeah,
is, but a YouTube watcher of X amount of minutes or hours is
yeah,
equally as good of a lead because they're looking for a solution and they bonded with you just like we've bonded with you over the course of video. So they already kind of feel that they know you
yeah,
because of the fact that we're a visual society. Just look at Netflix. Netflix during last week they released their earnings. I mean, their stock's trading at what $900. I mean, if you haven't figured out how to get video into your business, shame on you. Get video as your lead acquisition or get a hold of somebody like Daniel that does this for you because it is just golden. And I know Daniel will say, well, I need 30 hours or 60 hours of content, right? Just because I need to have fresh content that I could put out there to acquire and push together. And then the founder won't do it, right? Or something like that, but they'll spend 60 hours on something stupid, right? So use this time to create content, to create video, to kind of focus on how do I acquire my customer? How do I test
yeah,
all these alternative sources? Because listen, they used to say niches are reaches, right? They still are niches are reaches, but I think niche media, niche sources are riches, right? But you have to have a compelling offer for some of these.
mm-hmm. That's exactly right. Well, Nick, this has been a pleasure.
Oh, it's
I
been an honor.
anticipate doing more with you. I anticipate having you on because I just enjoy just hearing your brain, hearing the history truthfully. And this has been absolutely a blessing for me to sit here and just have a great conversation with you. So, with that said, where can people find you if they want to learn more about your sales skills, sales training, sales management, sales enablement, all of the sales things, and anything that you talk about? Where can they find you?
Yeah, well, I'd be remiss if I didn't say go to YouTube, right? I'd be remiss if I didn't say go to LinkedIn, right? So Nicholas Loise or Nick Loise on both of those channels. Sales Performance Team is our core company. We have a company that's called Your Sales Recruiter that does a lot of the recruiting business for our clients or for clients that want us to recruit, just purely recruit for them. You could go to Sales Pack, SalesPack Sales Performance Team. We give you a bunch of content. We get you a bunch of goodies. We like giving stuff away for free. So just go there, hit me up at my emails on my website, Nick at Sales Performance Team. You got a question? Just say you're a friend of Daniel or you heard us on the show, so we know, and we'll give you the right answer versus other shows that we don't like, and we give them the wrong answer. But we're here to help, right? I love this business. I love content creators. I am bullish on it. I do, and I am bullish on getting the really bad provocateurs that are giving really bad advice,
Mm,
not only on the sales side but on this side. So help us spread the word by liking this and sharing it and all that good stuff.
yeah. Well, thank you, Nick. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. So, folks, you heard it from him. Go check him out. Go check out his site. Tell him I sent you, and he'll give you the right answer. Other than that, I'm Daniel Pope with Be Known LLC, and we'll talk soon. Hey there, Daniel Pope here again. I want to take a couple seconds to talk about my company, Be Known. Now, Be Known exists to be a done-for-you service provider for online-based businesses, coaches, and those that sell online courses and information products. We help them grow from 6 figures to 7 figures and then into 8 figures. We do this because there's so much misinformation out there. So many people just selling a course or just a coaching program over how to grow. Well, we're different in the fact that we actually do it with our clients. We take care of the advertising. We take care of the email marketing, the tech, all the tech. Yes, all the tech, the landing pages, the funnels, the growth strategies and tactics. So I think of ourselves as a expert implementation team plus a fractional CMO per se that guides you every step of the way. So if you've listened to this podcast or an episode and said, okay, that's great, but I don't really know how to do that, or I just need help. Well, that's why we exist. So I want to invite you to a call with me, a consultation where we can talk through your business, talk through what's going on, what challenges you have, what constraints, what bottlenecks, and figure out a path forward. If we're a mutual fit to work together, great. If not, no problem. We'll send you on your way with resources and stuff that can help you get up to speed quick. So again, I invite you to talk more with me, and that is beknownonline.com. beknownonline.com/start is where you'll go. And I cannot wait to talk to you. Again, if you enjoyed this podcast, I'd love it if you can share with some friends. Otherwise, I'm looking forward to your success. Take care.